Hello, it's Matthew here from Nations of Sanity. I'm just doing a video on police brutality and the solution to police brutality. And just as a spoiler alert, the solution that I'm presenting is the Nations of Sanity project, which is not only the solution to police brutality, but it's also the solution to political corruption, environmental destruction, so many of the problems that we face in the world today. Now, when it comes to the issue of police brutality, there's kind of two problems. One of the problems is what we all recognise as bad cops, which are the police officers who step beyond their duties, step beyond their job description, and commit wanton acts of violence and aggression against members of the public. But then there's the others, and I'm not talking about the people that let them get away with that and watch them do it, because they're kind of accomplices to those crimes as well. But I'm talking about also is the police officers that just do their jobs, that just follow orders, that just work within their job description, because unfortunately they are criminals as well. And the reason they're criminals is because the laws that they enforce, most of the laws that they enforce, are themselves crimes. And this comes back to the more fundamental problem of what's wrong with our society and what's wrong with our law, our concept of law and the way we define crime. And this is the problem that the Nations of Sanity is presenting a solution for, because the idea behind the Nations of Sanity is to establish the non-aggression principle as the law through a peace agreement, basically making it the universal terms of peace between all people. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what the non-aggression principle is, it's basically the moral principle that's based on the concept of self-ownership, which is the idea that everyone has right over only their own self. So you own your body, you own your consciousness, you own your thoughts and your actions, which in addition to giving you right over yourself, also means that you're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for what you do and say and everything that you are. So it's important to understand that rights and responsibility go hand in hand when we talk about the freedom of self-ownership. But that's what self-ownership is. And that's what the non-aggression principle is based on. So it's not a pacifist principle. It does allow for the use of force, both to defend yourself and to defend others. But it strictly prohibits the initiation of force against peaceful people. Now, if this principle was established as universal law, then we wouldn't have ruling governments, but we could have voluntary collectives that could basically replace them and provide much of the services and infrastructure that we might want from ruling governments. But it's important that people understand that we don't need to have ruling governments to have these other things. In fact, when we have ruling governments, these other things become inevitably corrupt and full of bureaucratic inefficiencies, precisely because they're ruling governments, precisely because people don't have a choice as to whether they support such things and whether they're involved with such things. So when you have a truly free society where no one has the right to rule over others, then the collective organisations that you create will be there based on merit. Social programs will be there based on merit rather than people being forced to participate against their will. Now, the reason this applies particularly with regards to the issue of police brutality is, as I say, it's one thing that we have a problem with a lot of these bad cops that go beyond their job description and commit wanton acts of aggression based on their own will. But the other problem we have is even the order followers are a danger to us. Even those who are just doing their job and just following orders are committing crimes against peaceful people on a regular basis. Drug laws are obviously an obvious example of this, but there are many examples of this. So the reason why the Nations of Sanity presents our idea as not only a solution to a lot of the other problems that we face in this world, but it is also a problem that will deal with the issue of police brutality, because the only reason police get away with a lot of the brutality that they commit, whether it's within the bounds of their job description or without, or outside of those bounds, is because they are actually giving the authority to commit violence against peaceful people. Many of the laws that they enforce require that they have that authority. They wouldn't be able, for example, they wouldn't be able to enforce drug laws if they didn't have the power to initiate force against peaceful people, because somebody whose only crime is putting a drug in their own body, or even selling it to another consenting adult, hasn't violated anybody. They're not aggressing. They're peaceful people. So to commit violence, to enforce a law against such a thing would involve committing violence against peaceful people. So if the non-aggression principle was the law, established as the universal law, no one would have the power to rule over others. Now, we would still have law, obviously, and things like rape, murder, theft, assault, and all of the things that we can all recognize as crimes would still be crimes, and we would still have laws against those. But any organization that's dedicated to enforcing those laws would not need extra powers. They would not need extra rights. They would not need the ability to initiate force against peaceful people, because the beauty of the non-aggression principle is that enforcing it is by definition an act of defense. It doesn't require the initiation of force against peaceful people. In fact, it specifically prohibits the initiation of force against peaceful people. Likewise, the non-aggression principle doesn't require a ruling government to establish it as law or enforce it as law. Again, it specifically prohibits ruling governments, and it specifically prohibits any initiation of force against peaceful people. So anyone who sees the logic in what I'm saying, I would encourage you to look into the Nations of Sanity project more. This YouTube channel has more information on it. There's also a website called nationsofsanity.com, which has more information, including articles, and there's also a Facebook page. And what I'm basically asking people to do is to scrutinize this idea. If you think there's a flaw in it, then let me know. If you think it's a good idea, then help me spread the message and support it. And that's basically it. That's all I've got to say about that. The non-aggression principle is the objective standard that defines crime in an objective way, and it gives us a universal standard for morality and a universal standard for law. And establishing it as the law is the key to both defining and creating a free society where police brutality will truly be a thing of the past.